In the previous episode, everything was flowing. But now there is no time, no change, no trust in the senses. In other words, nothing is flowing. Nothing moves in the way we know it. Today, we are meeting perhaps the most motionless yet most shocking man in the history of philosophers, Parmenides. So, are you telling me that this guy also seriously did philosophy through poetry? Someone who tries to tell us profound things, but through poetry. It's a bit like sacrificing meaning for rhyme.
But that's exactly why it's important. Parmenides brought not just a new idea to philosophy, but a new way. He was no longer content with just thinking. He was also questioning how we think, and he did this through a long poem written in the voice of a goddess.
Wait a minute. A goddess, poetry, philosophy. What kind of mix is this?
It was a journey narrative. He presented the divergence of two paths to truth, both logically and mythologically. On one side, the changing world shown by the senses, on the other, the single unchanging reality pointed to by reason, being.
So this guy is telling us that what you see is an illusion. Only what you think is real.
And so it was a turning point for philosophers. The restless thought we started with Heraclitus now turns into a sharp line with Parmenides.
The idea of thinking through poetry still confuses me, but it's clear that we're dealing with someone extraordinary.
And the real reason for his extraordinariness is that he shows us the limits of thought.
All right, let me put it this way. If someone tells me there are two paths, I open the map and choose the shorter one. But the paths of these philosophers are neither short nor straight. Now Parmenides has appeared as well. He has drawn two paths. One is the path of truth, the other is the path of opinion.
Yes, and these paths are not outside, they begin in the human mind. The first path is being exists. This is the path of reason. The second path is being cannot exist. This is an illusion shown by the senses, but rejected by reason.
So is it like one is an asphalt road and the other is a dirt road?
Maybe one is stone and the other is mist. According to Parmenides, what is real is what does not change, and what does not change can only be grasped by reason. The senses, on the other hand, deceive us. They make us think that what is temporary is permanent.
But we see with our eyes, we hear with our ears. So, are you saying that what we experience isn't real now?
For Parmenides, truth is established not through the senses, but through reason. He says that it is impossible for the same thing to both exist and not exist at the same time. That's why the second path, the path of opinion, is a dead end.
So the goddess said, look, there are two paths, but if you take the second one, the path you take isn't really a path at all.
Exactly. And this is the first major epistemological distinction in philosophy. It's the line that starts us questioning not what we know, but how we know it.
So, from now on, will philosophy always walk along this fork in the road?
Perhaps philosophy begins with the courage to take that very first right step. And sometimes not taking the wrong path is the hardest thing of all.
I mean, just look at the sentence. Being exists. Is this it? Is this the idea that caused such a stir? Even elementary school kids can make this more complicated.
Parmenides' strength was not in saying something complex, but in stating what is fundamental. This sentence is the very first cornerstone of thought in the history of philosophy. Because he said this, being exists, non-being does not exist, and it is only possible to think about being.
But we always talk about things that exist anyway. I mean, I just can't understand why something this simple is so important.
Because thinking itself is directed toward an object, and if that object does not exist, the thought collapses as well. That's why, for Parmenides, you cannot think about what does not exist.
So now is it forbidden to talk about what doesn't exist?
It's not forbidden, it's just not possible. Because non-existence is something that lies outside of language. If there is thought, then thought is directed toward something. In that case, that thing exists. Otherwise, there can be no direction.
So, by saying being exists, did this man, in a way, set the boundaries for all philosophical discussions?
Exactly. He said, think only about what exists, get to know it, try to understand it. When you turn to what does not exist, you are only speaking with shadows.
And shadows deceive thought.
Just like the shadows of trees cast on the walls and curtains of a room deceive the eyes.
Look, we said being exists. Okay, but now he's also saying non-existence does not exist. But right now, we're talking about non-existence. So that means it exists.
No, we only think we're talking about non-existence. But in reality, what we're talking about is just an incomplete form of existence. In other words, when thought tries to reach something called non-existence, it actually doesn't reach anything at all.
But for example, let's say I said emptiness or there is nothing. Isn't that a thought?
In language, anything can be said. But according to Parmenides, not everything that can be said can be thought. A thought only has meaning if it is directed towards something that exists. When you talk about non-existence, thought becomes pointless. It's just like an arrow shot at random with no target.
So is this like a kind of philosophical language control?
Yes, Parmenides is purifying language. He limits true thought to true being and says, what does not exist can neither be thought nor expressed.
But the fear of non-existence, the thought of non-existence, these exist in our lives.
They are just reflections, not real, just shadows. Sometimes people take shadows seriously, but you can't grasp a shadow. That's why Parmenides said, only speak about what can be grasped.
So according to philosophers, the thing we fear most actually doesn't exist at all.
And maybe that's exactly why it feels so very frightening.
Wait a minute. Up until now, we've been saying that everything flows. We were in the river, burning in the fire. Now someone comes along and says nothing changes. If this isn't an antinomy, what is?
According to Parmenides, change is only an appearance. What is real is that which does not change, because to change means for something to become what it previously was not. In other words, to come into being from nothingness. But if there is no nothingness, then change is impossible.
But we do change. We grow up, we get old. Objects deteriorate. Are all of these just illusions?
According to Parmenides, yes. Our senses present us with appearances, but truth can only be grasped through reason, and reason says that being has always existed and always will.
That's a bit frightening. So if nothing ever changes, does that mean there's no hope either?
Or if nothing ever disappears, then there's no fear either, because anxiety comes with change. But a being that does not change is the very essence of peace.
So instead of Heraclitus' dance of fire, we have Parmenides' silence of marble.
One loved movement, the other loved stillness. But maybe philosophy is about knowing how to stay between these two.
Or perhaps it's about finding our own path while trying to understand both. So, does that mean the feeling of sitting on this couch right now is a lie? I saw it with my own eyes, I touched it with my own hand. But Parmenides says, don't trust your senses. But really, what else do we have?
According to Parmenides, your senses leave you on the surface. They show you not the truth, but the appearance. That's why the path to truth is walked not with the senses, but with reason.
But how can my mind deny something I saw with my own eyes?
For example, to your eye, the sun looks like a small ball, but reason knows that it is a massive body. The senses only give you the appearance. Truth is revealed only through thinking.
So, my own eyes are a person's first enemy.
It's more accurate to say they're the friend you get deceived by the most. Because the senses give you away immediately, whereas reason requires patience.
That's very exhausting. So, do I have to look at everything with suspicion?
Parmenides doesn't ask for suspicion, but for justification. He says that truth should follow thought. The senses, on the other hand, often mislead thought.
But reason can also be wrong sometimes.
Yes, but reason has the capacity to correct itself. The senses, however, only defend what they perceive.
So what this guy is saying is, open your mind, not your eyes.
And maybe that's why philosophy begins not with eyelids, but with concepts.
Look, I'm really doing my best. But this idea of the one, the indivisible, is getting to be a bit much. I mean, the world is so fragmented. People are so fragmented. How can this guy talk about just one thing?
Because according to Parmenides, if being truly exists, then it does not change. It was not born, it does not perish, and it cannot be divided. Because when something is divided, non-being comes in between. But if there is no non-being, then division is impossible.
So does nothing actually break apart? This pen, this table, us.
They may appear fragmented, but on the level where the mind perceives, all being is one. Just like the waves of an ocean may look different, but they are all made of the same water.
So then, where is individuality? Me, you, this room, are they all just one thing?
Yes, but this oneness is not a gathering of a crowd, it's a wholeness that was never divided in the first place. According to Parmenides, being is a spherical whole. It neither decreases nor increases, it is always there.
That's a bit suffocating. So we're living inside a single unchanging thing and there's no escape from it.
Or it could be very peaceful, because that which is one is not lacking anything. It cannot be lost, and you are within it as well.
So I was actually always there.
And you never left it.
All right, we said that being cannot be divided. We even said it was never born and will never cease to exist. But there's still something I don't understand. Does this happen within time? If the one has always existed, since when has it existed?
This is one of the most difficult points for Parmenides. If being is one, unchanging and indivisible, then time does not exist either, because time requires change. It needs to flow from the past to the future. But if there is no change, time does not flow either.
So, is the distinction between past, present, and future just an illusion?
Yes, an illusion created by the senses. The only thing that is real is an infinite present moment. And that present neither goes anywhere nor moves, it simply exists.
But then, are our lives, our memories, our plans, all of them illusions?
He doesn't say that they aren't real. It is not just the truth itself. Even the journey described in Parmenides' poem actually takes place not in time, but within consciousness. The voice of the goddess echoes within the infinite now.
I think I understand better now. So he didn't use the mythological narrative for nothing. Was this goddess story actually a poetic way of disregarding time?
Yes, because poetry transcends time. Parmenides wanted to show us this. Truth can only be reached with a timeless perspective. We do not travel from one place to another within time. We are always here.
So being escapes time within poetry, within myth.
And maybe that's why philosophy never broke away from mythology. It transformed it. Poetry, myth, symbols, these are what take us outside of time. All of these were ways to touch a timeless truth.
And those paths are still open. Just as I was getting used to Parmenides' way of thinking, now a goddess appears before us. So, after being, time, and the present, did he add mythology as well?
Parmenides deliberately begins his poem with a mythological scene. He tells of a journey made by a young man in a horse-drawn chariot. This journey leads toward a goddess who guards the gates of truth.
But isn't philosophy supposed to be rational? Why is there a goddess?
Because it is impossible to approach the truth directly. Parmenides' goddess is a symbol of reality. She stands at the boundary of thought and only allows in what is permitted.
So, is the goddess actually reason?
Yes, but at the same time, she also represents mystery. Truth cannot be stated plainly. This is where mythology comes into play. Where our language falls short, poetry and mythology speak.
So, are we still within myths? Didn't philosophy surpass them?
Maybe philosophy didn't surpass myths, it transformed them. Parmenides used mythology not as a narrative, but as a symbol. The goddess can be the one who opens or closes the doors to knowledge.
That's a bit unsettling. So, when the doors open, we don't know what we'll encounter.
Isn't truth itself just like that? We can't know what's inside without opening the door. Maybe that's why Parmenides' poem still remains mysterious. It only shows us a path. But it's up to us to open the door.
Honestly, this journey we started with Parmenides was a bit strange. Being is one, there is no change, no time. So, does philosophy really have to be this rigid?
Parmenides' path was rigid because he was in pursuit of the truth. Finding the truth is not easy. It requires giving up many things. Our senses, our habits, even time itself.
But if a person gives up this much, what is left?
According to Parmenides, only one thing remains. What is real? What is real is unchangeable, indivisible, and always exists. It simply exists.
So did people understand this? Or did Parmenides' philosophy appeal only to philosophers?
There were those who understood and those who resisted. But there was a man in the Eleatic school whom no one could ignore. Parmenides' student, Zeno.
The one famous for his paradoxes?
Yes, exactly him. Zeno posed such questions to defend his teacher's ideas that people are still searching for answers.
So Parmenides stopped us, and now Zeno is going to confuse our minds?
Maybe that's exactly how philosophy works. Someone seems to provide an answer. But then the next person comes along and shakes up all the answers with new questions.
So maybe what's important isn't the answers, but asking the right questions.
Maybe that's exactly what Zeno did. With his paradoxes, he left philosophy with an endless question. Are we really moving, or is movement just an illusion?
Parmenides left us with a thought that stretches from Elea to infinity. Now it's time to question that thought. Let's meet at the edge of infinity with Zeno's questions.